Okay, for today's finalists video, we're up to 1988. This is a painful one. I'm going to be completely honest, this is a painful one. The Boston Bruins get to the Stanley Cup final, and this was my second year cheering for them, and it was kind of a fun run, and it didn't last long enough. Ken Linseman led the team in scoring with 11 goals and 14 assists. Have I mentioned Ken Linseman was very good in the playoffs? Edmonton, Philly, Boston, very good in the playoffs. Bourque was second in scoring 3 goals and 18 assists. Ray Bourque, the best defenseman I've seen. I could see Nick Lidstrom, and you could argue either of them and you'd be right. Cam Neely, 9 goals and 8 assists. Craig Janney, 6 goals and 10 assists. Bob Joyce, 8 goals and 6 assists. Bob Sweeney, 6 goals and 8 assists. Even though Don wasn't on the team yet, I put B. Sweeney just to make sure there's no confusion. Glenn Wesley, 6 goals and 8 assists. Casper, 7 goals and 6 assists. Gord Kluzak, 4 goals and 8 assists. I did a video on Gord Kluzak a couple months ago about how he wasn't really a flop. He just got injured a lot. And this was one of his healthy runs. Keith Crowder, 3 goals and 9 assists. Randy Burridge, 2 goals and 10 assists. He was one of my favorites. Rick Middleton, 5 goals and 5 assists as his career was nearing the end. In net, it's unusual because Reggie Lemelin had 11 wins and 6 losses. 2.64 goals against, .895 save percentage. Andy Moog, 1 win, 4 losses, 4.23 goals against, .849 save percentage. Let's discuss Andy Moog before we get into the results. Andy Moog was tired of being a backup in Edmonton, wanted more ice time, and he walked out on the team. He went and he played in Calgary for the Winter Olympics in 1988. He split the net with Sean Burke. They both played 4 games. Canada finished 4th in those Olympics. No medal for him. But, Moog was staying in shape and doing well. After he arrived in Boston, he only played 6 games. He arrived at the trade deadline. And they had tried to trade him to Pittsburgh, the Oilers did, for Steve Gwinnett and a first-round draft pick. And the general manager said no first-round draft pick for Andy Moog. So Moog was a hot commodity at the time. And Boston picked him up. But notice, he doesn't play very much in the playoffs because he didn't play very well in the playoffs. Andy Moog's playoff heroics were later on. His time as a starter was later on, and Moog and Lemelin was one of the best tandems I can remember for Boston. I'm sure people are going to say, what about Thomas and Rask? This felt different. Moog and Lemelin have got along pretty well. And yet, when you look at Andy Moog's career and you look at all the stuff about Andy Moog, clearly he rubbed some people the wrong way, and he had problems with coaches, he had problems with his teammates sometimes. And maybe that's part of the reason why, despite his solid career numbers, he's never made it to the Hall of Fame. But let's go through the run that Boston had. First round against Buffalo, they win 7-3. They win 4-1 at home. They're up 2-0. They lost 2 on the road. They lost 6-2 and then 6-5 in overtime. They won 5-4 at home, and then they win the 6th game 5-2 in Buffalo. Then they play Montreal in the second round. Now, Montreal-Boston is the key matchup. It is the key, they really hate each other kind of matchup. This was when my father and I started sparring off over the playoffs quite a bit. The idea being this: I was not allowed to cheer for Boston over Montreal because Montreal was a Canadian team. My argument being I can cheer for Boston over Montreal because Montreal was my dad's team. And that was really all it was at the start. And this run by Boston really solidified my fandom of the Boston Bruins, because when I'm being told I can't enjoy an American team, I'm like, why? These guys are Canadians. I looked at all the Canadian players. It's like, that doesn't matter. The jersey they're wearing matters. I'm like, what part of Canada's Matt Snaslin from? And then the argument starts. Montreal won game 1, 5-2. And this looks familiar to Boston fans because Montreal has owned the hell out of Boston for decades. This was the era that kind of sort of changed that. Then Boston wins 4-3, 3-1, 2-0, and the final game 4-1. And that was quite the bragging rights that I had. And they lasted for a while, because Andy Moog, who didn't do much during this run, would become the Habs killer. He would become the guy who can knock out Montreal, which is saying something since Jerry Cheever struggled to do it. And many Boston goaltending greats before then struggled to do it, and after that struggled to do it as well. The ownage that Montreal has over Boston is a real thing. And it's gone on, like I said, for decades. You want to look at the original Pittsburgh-Washington mismatch, Boston-Montreal's it. So Boston gets past that, and they move on to New Jersey in the semifinal that I don't think anybody had predicted. And New Jersey, Sean Burke was this goalie who'd come in for them. There you go. There's the connection. New Jersey loses the first game to Boston 5-3. Boston lost the second game to Jersey 3-2 in overtime. Boston wins game 3 6-1. They lose game 4 3-1. They win game 5 7-1. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that was. Yeah, there are certain games I look back on and I go, man, that was fun. Then they lose game 6 6-3, which made me nervous. But in game 7, the nerves didn't last very long. They won that one 6-2. Then they get to the final, and it's the Oilers, and I'm hating it before it's even started. Edmonton wins game 1 2-1. They win game 2 4-2. Series shifts back to Boston. Like, all right, just don't lose at home. They lose game 3 6-3. Game 4, my rage. There's a rage in both this season with the Bruins and in 1990. My rage in 1988 was the power outage at 16:37 of the second period while the game was tied at 3. It was Boston Garden being Boston Garden. It was frustrating because they then decided, okay, well, we're just going to call it a game and we're going to play game 4 in Edmonton. And every Bruins fan everywhere screamed at this news. There wasn't an internet back then. It was frustrating because I felt like in that game that was 3-3, I thought, okay, Boston's going to win at least this game and they won't get skunked. It's not going to be a 4-game sweep for Edmonton. At least we're going to win a game and have that on our resume that we won a game against the Oilers. Yes, we lost, but at least it wasn't a sweep. The score of game 5 was 6-3. And they won a 5-game series 4-0. It was very, very frustrating. It was something that made me really angry. And in 1990, it was a different incident altogether that made me angry at the Oilers. But I knew Boston wasn't as good as the Oilers. And I'm not going to stand here right now and tell you that this lineup was anywhere near what the Oilers were throwing on the ice with about 35 Hall of Famers in their lineup. But it was frustrating as a fan to watch this. Because Boston had come so far and they were just right on the verge. And this whole series of the Finalists is about being right on the verge. If Boston had won the Cup in 88 or 1990, there would be more of a reputation of being that winner. But because of the fact that there was that huge gap between the winner in the 70s and then the 2011 win, that's not there. And then Boston didn't go back and win another Cup. So, it doesn't help. It's not like Chicago went between 1961 and 2010 and then didn't win again. They won 2 more after that. Boston, not so lucky. They lost their final in 2013. So this is the first of 3 finalists videos I'll be doing on Boston. If I had to compare the pain of the losses in the finals the Boston Bruins suffered, this is third. Because I had only been cheering for the Bruins for a couple of years at that stage, and I was still having fun with it. I didn't take it as seriously as I would later. Definitely not as serious as I take games between Montreal and Boston now. Or the rivalry I get concerned with now is Boston and Toronto. But, yeah, this was quite the finals. And the Oilers rightfully stomped the Bruins. It's just too bad that game 4 got shifted to Edmonton. Because technically it was game 5. So game 4, 3-3 tie, it's just a lost game. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.